What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. The newest Pokemon TCG set, Rebel Clash, has recently been released, and it will be legal soon for the Limitless Online Series Qualifier number 3 on the weekend of May 16th. So I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what are going to be the best decks, and you're testing to find out which decks should succeed in tournament play. So today I'm here to tell you what I think the top archetypes are. In this video, I'm going to outline what I think the top 3 archetypes of decks are, and then I also have 2 other considerations to share. I have a few lists along the way, a couple variants of each archetype, and it should be good. A lot of information here to talk about for the new Rebel Clash format. Very hyped for it. Before we get into the video, I want to shout out PotownStore.com, my sponsor and the best place for you to get ptcgo codes. Use code CELIO for 5% off there. And I'd also like to mention my Patreon, where I'm creating exclusive content for patrons, so head on over there if you'd like to become a member of that. The first deck I want to talk about, or the first archetype I want to talk about, is Dragapult VMAX. There are a few variants floating around, but I do think the most popular variant, and possibly the best variant, is the one that Takuya Yoneda popularized with the manual attachment of energy, no real energy acceleration, and a lot of tech single prize Pokemon, especially ones you can use with Scoop Up Net. I have created a list that I'll share with you in just a moment that I think will kind of look like the stereotypical list that I'm expecting to see, or at least what I've been kind of gathering from looking at YouTube and playing on ladder and stuff like that. A couple other variants do include a Malamar variant with some energy acceleration and other tech attackers like Gengar Mimikyu Tag Team and Giratina from Lost Thunder. And then there's also some Roxy variants and some Greens variants that saw some play over in Japan, but they haven't really transitioned elsewhere just yet. Dragapult VMAX is a new card from Rebel Clash, and it has a lot of hype around it, which also means that it may just be more popular as well because of the hype, but I do think this card is very strong and very versatile and will be propelled directly into Tier 1. So it has the max Phantom attack that does 130 damage and 5 damage counters to the benched Pokemon however you like. With the help of Horror Energy and either Spell Tag or Giant Bomb, it can spread more damage to the active when it gets hit, so it can actually two-shot Tag Team Pokemon and even VMAX Pokemon while damaging the benched as well. I think this card has such great support with psychic types. So it has Horror Energy and Spell Tag. It has good psychic type Pokemon like Malamar. It has Mysterious Treasure for search. I think it's just set up to succeed, and I do expect it to be both popular and successful in the Rebel Clash standard format, which is why I have it up here in Tier 1, even though it was just released. The decks aren't really concrete yet. I think it will have a ton of success, and I see so much potential in this card. On this next slide here, I have a list that I've constructed to kind of represent what I think the stereotypical Dragapult VMAX list might look like for the early days of the Rebel Clash format. So it's very much based on the Takuya Yoneda list from Japan that's been popularized, but I have changed a couple things that I think players might do, which is add in the Giratina that removes a special energy from the defending Pokemon, and add stadium cards, possibly like Shrine of Punishment, which I have run into Dragapult VMAX decks playing Shrine of Punishment, and I've seen some lists with that in there as well. All of the lists that I share in this video will be available in a spreadsheet, and you can find the link to that in the description down below. Next on my list are Zacian V archetypes, and this would include ADP Zacian, Luke Metal Zacian, and the kind of Zacian only variant, or the speed Zacian variant that has been getting some talk with the Jirachi Prism and the Mr. Mime from Detective Pikachu. And this variant is just now coming up because of Scoop Up Net allowing you to reuse the Jirachi and reuse the Mr. Mime. I do think adpz will be the most popular of the Zacian variants. It has been proven, it's already been popular. It was the best deck before Rebel Clash came out, and I think it will be one of the best decks with Rebel Clash in the format. And Zacian V archetype in general will be very, very high up. I think the Luke Metal Zacian and the Jirachi Prism versions of Zacian or the speed version of Zacian. I think those will sit around tier 2. Maybe the speed Zacian variant is better than I think, and it will go up to tier 1. But in general, Zacian V is definitely top tier, and I do think the adpz variant of Zacian V will be the most popular, at least at the beginning of the Rebel Clash standard format. I have faith in adpz's raw power because it turns out taking an extra prize card is still very good. That is always going to be powerful. And even though we have some VMAXs coming into the format, we also have Boss's Order coming out in Rebel Clash. So adpz can just gust around these large VMAX Pokemon and hit the Dedenes or hit the single prize support Pokemon on the bench, or even knock out the Vs before they become VMAXs. So there are some things coming to challenge Zacian V and adpz specifically, but I do think it can adapt and it will still be very strong. So let's take a look at, like I did with Dragapult VMAX, what I think a stereotypical adpz list might look like for the early days of Rebel Clash, specifically for the Limitless Qualifier 3. So it gets Eldegoss V from Rebel Clash, which can retrieve a supporter from the discard pile to hand. It's basically versus Seeker in a when you play it down ability. And then there's also Zamazenta V, which was already out in Sword and Shield base set, but there weren't really VMAX Pokemon threatening this deck, so it wasn't being used yet, but it has the ability that prevents damage done to it by VMAX Pokemon, so this can definitely come in handy versus Dragapult VMAX, even if Rillaboom VMAX sees play, Inteleon VMAX sees play, etc. The energy switches, this is something I was playing in my Rebel Clash adpz lists anyway, because I felt like you needed that extra tempo if decks were playing Yell Grunt, or you could even just pop off and get the Tournament Alter Creation GX. And it turns out this ended up being good in the Ultra Prism through Sword and Shield format at the end of the format before Rebel Clash came out, because the adpz lists, or at least some of the adpz lists that were seeing success in the Limitless qualifiers, were running some energy switch. And like I said earlier, this deck gains Boss's Order, just like most decks gain Boss's Orders with the release of Rebel Clash. And I've also thrown in a Tool Scrapper because I think players will want to use Tool Scrapper to get rid of things like Giant Bomb or opposing adpzs that have Big Charms or Metal Frying Pans on them. The last archetype I'd like to talk about that I think is going to be near the top of the meta, if not at the top, is Baby Blacephalon. Now, this archetype didn't really seem to gain much from Rebel Clash, so this might be a surprise to you, but I think Blacephalon, Unbroken Bonds, or Baby Blacephalon, whatever you want to call it, is very, very powerful. It's the best single prize attacker we have, and I'm namely talking about the Jirachi variant or the ability variant, but from time to time the Greens Exploration variants of Baby Blacephalon do see some success. But the variant that got something at all from Rebel Clash is the Jirachi build. It actually gained Scoop Up Net, so now this deck can play Scoop Up Net with the Mewtwo that has Mind Report, which puts a supporter from the discard pile on top of your deck. We can use this now in the deck instead of Pal Pad to get back Welders, and Welder is really the name of the game with the Baby Blacephalon deck. One of the biggest things Baby Blacephalon gains, in my opinion, from Rebel Clash is that Dragapult VMAX is potentially chasing two of Baby Blound's worst matchups out of the metagame, or at least making them less popular. And those two matchups are Spelltag Malamar and Mill variants. So while I do think Mill variants are still strong, and Spelltag Malamar might stick around because of the diehard Malamar fans, or maybe it will just stick around and still see success, but I do think Spelltag Malamar and Mill variants are both going to see a decline in play, which is good for Baby Blound. So while it might not be getting the most out of Rebel Clash, like card-wise, I think it's getting a bit of a matchup buff there, because two of its worst matchups are potentially declining, or at least I theorize that they are going to decline. And with more VMAX Pokemon coming out, or better VMAX Pokemon coming out in Rebel Clash that may see a lot of play, and Dragapult VMAX will definitely see a lot of play, there's more 3-prize Pokemon for Blacephalon to try to one-shot, and Blacephalon can one-shot Dragapult VMAX. It can one-shot anything, really. but 7 energy will get the one shot on Dragapult VMAX. So I do think Baby Blounds might struggle a bit versus Dragapult VMAX because Dragapult decks can spread damage around, take multiple knockouts in a single turn, but Blacephalon can just outpace them with bursts of damage in a single turn. As early as turn 1, if they're going second, they can start one-shotting Dragapult Vs, and turn 2, they can start one-shotting Dragapult VMAXs once they hit the board. So I don't think there's anything extremely threatening coming out of Rebel Clash for Baby Blounds. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not the perfect deck, but it is a very, very strong single prize attacker, probably the best single prize attacker that we have that's at least been discovered in the meta yet. And I do think this deck is going to be very, very strong, at least for the early days of the Sword and Shield Rebel Clash format. So I have a list here. This was actually from Azul GG's YouTube channel. He posted a Baby Blounds list with the scoop up nets and the Mewtwo, just like I mentioned. Something interesting he has in this list is also the Giratina that I have in the Dragapult VMAX list that removes a special energy. Since he is playing 4 scoop up nets here, he's also taking advantage of that and using something else that can benefit from super scoop up nets, sorry. Which is the Giratina, and then the other card that can benefit from it is the Mewtwo. And of course, he's playing Jirachis, and if you don't hit a switch, you hit a Scoop Up Net, and you can get the Jirachi out of there with Scoop Up Net. So I don't think this list is perfect yet, but I do think it is a very, very solid early Rebel Clash Blacephalon list, and I think people are going to start with this when they're building the Rebel Clash Baby Blounds list, which is why I chose this as my featured list for the archetype. Since Azul has a fairly popular YouTube channel, I do think players will kind of take this and then mold it to how they want to build the deck. But like I said, I think this is a very good starting point for the deck. So I think this is going to resemble what you might see on ladder or in online tournaments like the Limitless Qualifier number 3. So I've talked about my 3 archetypes that I think are at the top of the Rebel Clash meta. And if you're mad at me because your favorite deck isn't up there, we still have one more shot for me to redeem myself, because I do have a couple of other considerations. But like I said, if your deck isn't here, tell me what deck you think should have been here and why, and I could definitely be wrong. So let's talk about it in the comments down below. I always encourage this kind of discussion, and I want to hear from the people watching these videos what you think the best decks in the format are going to be. So I do have 2 other archetypes, like I said, that I'm considering as either high or could potentially be high depending on how the meta shifts and how the meta shapes up. And those other 2 archetypes are going to be ADP Spirit Tomb and Mill variants. So ADP Spirit Tomb started getting traction when Ross Cawthon placed well at the Limitless Qualifier number 1 with it, and then he also placed well again at the Limitless Qualifier number 2 with it. ADP Spirit Tomb was kind of a rogue deck I saw tossed around a little bit, like here's a list on Twitter, here's a video on YouTube, but it never really got traction because it never performed well. It didn't seem consistent enough. It seemed like an okay tier 3 Mimi rogue deck. Let's try to revitalize Spirit Tomb. But then Ross Cawthon brought it to the spotlight in the Limitless Qualifier number 1. So if you'd like to see a ADP Spirit Tomb list, you can check it out on Limitless. Ross Cawthon placed 3rd, I believe, in the Limitless Qualifier number 1. And my friends over at the Sable Eyes YouTube channel, they also posted a new Rebel Clash list for that. So Spirit Tomb does have an advantage because Dragapult VMAX is weak to it, and you can also easily tech in something like Tapu Fini to give you a little edge against Baby Blounds, and there you go, you're teched for 2 of the top 3 archetypes I just talked about. So I do think ADP Spirit Tomb has a shot. We'll have to see how the meta shapes up, how ADP Spirit Tomb's matchups actually shape up to be. And the other one I wanted to talk about is Mill. So Mill is probably not just off the map. Like, a new set comes out, I don't think Mill just goes away. Now, I do admit it probably has issues versus Dragapult VMAX, but I do think Mill is going to survive. The question is it going to thrive the way that it has in the Ultra Prism through Sword and Shield meta. So I do think it will be around. I don't think you should expect to see 0 mil in the next Limitless qualifier or on the ladder. So I'm almost positive it will survive. The question is, will it thrive and will it perform well? So I expect it to be around, and I'm considering it. It's just another thing, like if the meta shapes up, if the good matchups for it are popular, if people don't tech for it. So I do think it could find itself at the top. I'm not as confident in Mill as I am in the top 3 that I mentioned, and it's the same for ADP Spiritomb. I think it could find itself at the top. I'm just not as confident in it as I am in Dragapult VMAX variants, Zacian variants, and Baby Blacephalon. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. These are my current thoughts as of the time I'm recording this video for the Rebel Clash standard format and the meta that may or may not shape up to look like I have talked about today with these decks. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like I said, I'd love to get some discussion going. And you can also join my Discord. Link is in the description down below for that if you'd like to continue the discussion over there or on my stream at twitch.tv/CeliosNetwork. When I am live, make sure you're following over there at Twitch and on Twitter to know when I'm going live. I don't have the same schedule every week, but I do try to update everyone either in my Discord, on Twitter, or both when I will be going live and what days. Be sure to check out PotownStore.com if you need ptcgo codes and use code Celio for 5% off. I've also recently become affiliated with tcgplayer.com, so if you're shopping on there, be sure to use the link down in the description below. Like I said earlier with the Dragapult VMAX list, that list, the ADPZ list, and the Baby Blowns list are all exported from ptcgo in a spreadsheet, and be sure to go check out Azul GG's video on the Baby Blowns list because that is where it came from if you haven't already seen that video. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.